You know, the greatest strategic failure in digital advertising is something called the winning ad trap. It's this belief that once you find a high-performing hook, your work is done. But that ignores a fundamental neurological fact. Novelty is a perishable resource. So today, we're going to unpack the truth that separates the campaigns that truly scale from the ones that just crash and burn.
Just let that sink in for a minute. This is the core paradox we're talking about with hook saturation. The very thing that makes your ad work, that unique, attention-grabbing hook, is actually a depreciating asset. But unlike a car, which loses value over years, a creative hook loses value with every single impression. Its novelty is finite. So look, it's not a question of if your winning ad will fail, but when. And today we're going to get into the precise neurological mechanism behind this decay, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it.
If you've ever run ads at any kind of scale, you know this exact feeling. You've got a campaign and it is absolutely crushing it. Your return is fantastic, your cost per acquisition, your CPA is nice and low. So you do the logical thing, right? You crank up the budget. And for a little while, it's pure magic. But then all of a sudden, it's like a switch just flips. Your CPA skyrockets, profitability completely vanishes, and you're left scrambling, just wondering what on earth went wrong. Well, that isn't bad luck. It's a predictable crisis, and it's rooted in neuroscience.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start by taking apart the winning ad trap. Then we'll dive into the core mechanism, the Hook Decay Cycle. From there, we'll get into the science of it all with the brain's ignore button. And then, the most important part, we'll build a framework for mastery. We'll wrap it all up by reframing this whole game as the race against boredom.
All right, let's start with this core misconception, the one that just plagues so many ad strategies. It's this idea that an ad is a static asset, kind of like a billboard. You know, you find the right message, you put it up, and you just let it run. But in the digital world, that thinking is just fundamentally broken.
So what we have here is a fundamental conflict. On one side, you've got the common belief. Find a winning ad, set the budget, and forget it. You treat it like it's a finished product. But the neurological truth, on the other side, tells a totally different story. Attention is a biological function, and our brains are literally hardwired to prioritize what's new. Novelty isn't just some creative bonus, it is a resource that you are actively spending with every single impression.
And this brings us right to our core concept, hook saturation. Let's be really clear about what this is. It's the inevitable process where that hook, the first few seconds, the headline, that core idea, loses its ability to grab attention simply because your audience has seen it too many times. Its effectiveness decays, performance plummets, and your CPA explodes. It's not your ad failing, it's your audience's attention adapting.
So, how does this decay actually happen? Let's break down the precise mechanism. We're about to see how a really powerful pattern interrupt becomes nothing more than invisible background noise.
Just consider this number. When you scale a campaign, the algorithm doesn't just show your ad to new people, it also increases the frequency. That's the number of times the same person sees it. Your target audience might see that perfect hook 5, 6, even 10 times. And each of those extra views isn't reinforcing the message, it's actively working against you. It's teaching your audience's brain that your ad is old news, and it's training them to ignore it faster the next time it pops up.
Now, to really understand why this happens, we need to talk about a specific part of your brainstem called the Reticular Activating System, or the RAS. Think of the RAS as the bouncer at the nightclub of your consciousness. Its job is to filter the billions of bits of information hitting you every second and decide what's important enough to get past the velvet rope. And its number one rule for entry? Novelty. If something's new, if it's different, it gets in. If it's old, familiar, and predictable, well, it gets ignored to save precious mental energy.
This filtering process happens in 3 predictable phases. First up is the alpha phase. This is the golden window. Your hook is new, it breaks expectations, and it successfully interrupts the user's scroll. The RAS flags it as important, and your ad is profitable. But this phase is temporary. After a few views, we enter the beta phase, pattern recognition. The user's brain has now seen the ad enough times to categorize it. The RAS basically says, oh, I've seen this before, I know it's coming. The surprise is gone. And finally, this is where campaigns die. We hit the gamma phase, pattern ignore. The ad is now fully habituated. It's become familiar background noise, like the hum of your refrigerator. The RAS doesn't just deprioritize it, it actively filters it out. The user scrolls right past, often without even consciously realizing they saw your ad at all.
And this right here captures that critical tipping point. The very element that was designed to interrupt the scroll has become an expected part of the feed. The moment that happens, your ad goes from being a valuable asset to a liability. It's not just failing to get new customers, it's actively training the market that your brand's ads are skippable. Okay, let's dig even deeper into the psychology here. Why is the brain so ruthlessly efficient at ignoring our ads? Well, it comes down to two powerful, hardwired principles of energy conservation.
On the left, you've got neural adaptation. You might also know it as habituation. This is a fundamental process. Think about it. You walk into a room with a loud fan. It's annoying at first, right? But after a few minutes, your brain literally stops hearing it. It just filters out that constant, unchanging stimulus. Well, your ad is that fan. After a few views, the neurons that process it simply stop firing as hard. Then, on the right, you have the fatigue heuristic. This is a mental shortcut. Our subconscious learns to connect "I've seen this before" with "this is not important to me." It's a quick judgment call, to just dismiss familiar stuff and save the energy of reevaluating.
So here's the crucial takeaway. You're not fighting against a competitor's ad. You're not even fighting against a weak value proposition. You are fighting against millions of years of evolution. Your audience's brain isn't just passively getting bored. It is actively, neurologically programmed to ignore your repetitive ad as a survival mechanism to conserve energy. That is the real challenge of scaling.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem and the deep science behind it. And yeah, it might sound a little bleak, but understanding the system is always the first step to beating it. So let's pivot to the actionable solution, a framework for mastering this entire cycle. To manage what you can't see, you have to measure it. And the single most important metric for detecting hook saturation is the frequency to CTR ratio. Your CTR, or click-through rate, tells you how engaging your ad is. Frequency tells you how many times on average a person has seen it. This ratio is your canary in the coal mine. It's what tells you exactly when your novelty is wearing off. Let's look at a really practical example. In this audit, you can see that as ad spend goes up, so does frequency. Now initially the CTR is high, but right here, this is the inflection point. The moment frequency crosses a certain threshold, the CTR begins to decay. That is your habituation point. This is the single most important piece of data you can have. It's a leading indicator of failure. By the time your CPA skyrockets, it's already too late. The habituation point is the data screaming at you. This hook is now in the beta phase. You need to act now.
This leads us to a clear, three-stage blueprint. First, you use that frequency to CTR audit to detect your habituation point. You have to know your hook's wear-out number. Second, before performance collapses, you execute a first-frame mutation. And third, on a strategic level, you launch a creative stack to prevent this from becoming a crisis in the first place. Now, the first-frame mutation is an incredibly powerful and efficient tactic. Instead of scrapping the entire ad you worked so hard on, you only change the first 1 to 3 seconds. The visual hook, the headline, the first line of audio. Why? Because that's all the reticular activating system needs to see. By changing just the beginning, you make the whole ad feel new again. You're resetting the brain's novelty clock and tricking the RAS into letting your message through one more time, even if 90% of the ad is exactly the same. And this tactic fits into a much bigger strategy, building a creative stack. Instead of relying on one winning hook, you launch with 5 to 10 different hooks for the very same product. This lets the ad platform's algorithm do the work for you, cycling through different pattern interrupts. This is a fundamental shift. You stop thinking about how to scale the budget of a single ad, and you start focusing on scaling a creative factory. Your system becomes resilient because it doesn't depend on one hook. It depends on a continuous process of generating novelty.
This brings us to our conclusion, and it's really a fundamental reframing of what it even means to win at digital advertising today. It's not about finding some magic bullet.
The ultimate takeaway is this mindset shift. Winning is not the act of finding one perfect, static ad. It is the process of building a perfect, dynamic system for creative iteration, a system that anticipates decay, measures it, and responds with strategic novelty before it's too late. It's about going from being a static advertiser to a dynamic market leader who gets the cold logic of how our brains work.
So I'll just leave you with this question to think about for your own work. Are you operating like a static advertiser, desperately looking for that one winner and then just riding it until it dies? Or are you building the systems to become a dynamic market leader, someone who's always one step ahead of your audience's ignore button? Because in the end, the best marketing doesn't have to use brute force. It doesn't push people through a funnel, it pulls them toward value. Because it understands the most fundamental rule of attention. You have to be fresh enough to be seen in the first place.